Hello, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Smoko podcast. My name is Alexis Armstrong, your host. Nice to meet you. The Smoko podcast is a place to celebrate and highlight women, trans women, and non binary folk working within STEM and trade occupations. So please tune in, take a break, and join us. We are on Smoko. And today we are extremely lucky to be joined by Kelly Kienleitner, who is a trailblazer and educator for women in the electrical trades. She's a tradeswoman. She has not one, but two red seals, which is pretty incredible as an electrician and a motor winder. And she's also an educator and a professor at the EJTC, which is the Electrical Joint Training Committee. And we're going to talk a little bit about that program, her work with it, some of the initiatives and programs that they're partnership and they're doing, which are pretty incredible, and just her experience as a tradeswoman and mentor. So, Kelly, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, thanks so much for inviting me. It's interesting. When I started, I was so alone that I never thought anybody would see me. This is a big deal because, yeah.
Aw, well,
Yeah.
thank you. Honestly, that's why I started the show and started the podcast was exactly that because I was like, I feel like we just don't really have like storytelling spaces. But
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine because you were literally alone. Like you were like the first, like one of the
Yeah.
first Red Seals in the province, which is like absolutely insane.
Yeah.
And
In my first trade, I was literally the first red sealed female in Canada.
oh my God, I thought it
And
was
the
just
first,
BC.
no, and then the first woman in BC to become a journey in that trade.
Oh my goodness. Kelly,
Yeah.
that's amazing. Like like trailblazer for sure, but like definitely
Yeah.
lonely. Like I couldn't even imagine that experience of like being the one. And maybe let's start there. Like let's maybe go back to the very beginning because like I didn't realize it was Canada.
Oh,
I thought it was just BC. But
yeah.
you're both motor winder and electrician. How did
Yes.
you discover the trades? Like which one was first? Because I couldn't really figure out if it was
Oh.
motor winder or electrician. And then what drew you to become a tradeswoman? Like what about it that you were like, yep, okay, this is me.
Oh, this starts eons ago. My dad was in the military, was a
Okay.
weapons tech, which meant he built
Oh,
weapons for a living. My stepdad is a mechanic from the military. My grandfather was a farmer. So I was raised with tools in my hand and jobs were jobs.
yeah,
But my parents still had this very clear delineation that when I came out of school, A, I was going to go to university, B, I was going to get a white collar job,
yeah.
and C, I was never going to see tools. Well,
Whoops.
yeah. So that worked in my 20s, but in my 30s, in the middle of a divorce with a child on welfare, it was like, okay, I
Oh,
have to make
shame.
different choices.
Yeah.
And literally, I went through a class at adult ed that was literally called career choices. And I took tests for like 3 days. And it was just all sorts of different testing of different skill sets. And when it was all done, they spit out 100 jobs that I had the attitude, the aptitude, or the training to do. And because I'm ex military,
Mm.
there was a whole bunch of really fun ones. My favorite was demolitions expert.
Oh,
And when I
cool.
talked to my mom about it, she's like, no. And I'm like, but mom, she goes, no.
I want all your fingers. Like, absolutely not. You're not becoming a demolition expert.
She says, you've broken almost every bone in your body as a child playing sports. We're not letting you play with explosives. It's like, okay, fine. And I narrowed it down to electrician and corrections officer. And it was based on 5 years making 50,000, something I could leave at home or leave at work, because in my other world as an insurance human being, I used to do money fund management.
Mm.
So I was always thinking about people's money, and it was
Yeah.
always in the back of my head.
Stress. Mhm.
And I didn't need it. I already had a kid and I was in the middle of a divorce. So it was this, okay, I need something I can just leave at work.
Yeah.
Not really understanding that that's not who I am, but never mind. That's a whole different story. Talk to my buddies who are corrections officers, and they're like, listen, you look all tough, but we all know what kind of a bushy little
Softy.
marshmallow you are.
Yeah.
And what you see in jail will absolutely destroy
Oh,
you. We
yeah.
don't want you to go there. We don't want you to be there. Please don't do this. And then I went to talk to my buddies that were electricians, and they're like, you're crazy enough this might work.
I love that this is part of our industry and we're like, yep, you passed that bar, so this is for you. Welcome.
Yep. So with welfare, I managed to get into an upgrading school, which BC Hydro's school at the time was running. And it was quite literally people on welfare who were trying to upgrade. So I went in and got tested, upgraded my math, my physics, and my English, because I'd been teaching. I had a daycare for like 3.5 years. So I was lucky enough to get in, blasted through. It was so funny because my mom, as I hit every grade, because it started in grade 9, and blew my way through up till grade 12. And my mom was looking at my marks going, why didn't you do this in high school?
Mm.
I'm like, because I didn't care, Mom. Nobody could tell
I
me
was the
why.
same way. Yeah. I was a
And
complete switch in university. All of a sudden it was like it went from like learning ed and C's to like A's just because I was
yeah,
finally actually invested. I was the exact same way. Sorry,
yeah,
continue.
yeah. No, totally.
Yeah.
It blew me away because I had always been the lazy kid in school. Like I talk to my students now and I say, okay, who didn't have to study all the way through school? And I'm like this, right? And there's, okay, you never learned how to study. You're going to have to learn now because that's one of the things about the trades. But doing that upgrading gave me enough base skill that when I started into pre-apprenticeship, which for me was 10 months, I wasn't foundering in the basic skills because I had them walking in the door.
Mm.
And that's one of the reasons why within our own school, I'm really glad that we have standards and levels where we say, okay, you have to have this education level
Mm-hmm.
because we know that's what it takes to survive all the way through.
Yeah, totally.
It just,
This
it just
technical
does.
program. Yeah,
Oh,
completely.
yeah. And electricians go to school longer than anybody else.
Oh, I didn't realize
So,
that for a trade. I didn't know
yeah,
that.
yeah, we go 40 weeks, whereas there isn't another trade that goes as long as we do.
Mm.
I went in and I'm like, okay, I did a trade at BCIT. It was the first one for women. It was all nights. We did 12 trades in 12 nights. It was so much fun. Anne St. Eloy, who was one of the first women in the plumbing union out here in Vancouver, she actually ran the program. But I tried it. It was like, yeah, I want to be an electrician. I ended up in pre-app. I loved my pre-app program. My pre-app instructor was just the most amazing human being. His name was Al Miles. He accepted me, didn't see me as different, treated me the same, and expected the same from the rest of the class. And I was the only girl in my class.
Mm.
So Al was the one who told me to teach. He's literally the one that said, you have to
Aw.
teach. And I was like, why? I just want to be a journeyman. He goes, no, no, no. He said,
No, you gotta go.
I've watched you. He said, we need women teaching so that men see us teaching and so that women see us teaching. And I went,
Oh.
yeah, but I just want to be a journey. He said, that's the other side of the conversation. You're really good on the tools and you're a really good teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So he planted that seed. And literally at 35, when I walked onto the tools the first time, it became my 20-year plan. That was, I'm going to teach 20 years on the tools because I watched the old guys, right? The old 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds I was working with. And I thought, yeah, no,
That's not correct. Yeah.
no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Right. There's
Yeah.
got to be another path. And because Al had planted the seed, I ended up. But I went into winding because at the end of pre-app, the only thing available electrically was residential. And I cannot do the same thing every day. But I fell in love with magnetism in pre-app. The whole idea with a DC machine that if I put magnetism in, I can get work out.
Yeah.
It's just this whole and
It
the
is
fact
true
that,
magic. It really
oh
is.
my
It's like
God,
it's mind-blowing magic. Like it's pretty beautiful if you like really sit there and like look at it and be like, "Whoa, how does this work?" Yeah,
like
unreal.
how does that function?
Yeah.
And transformers and like it just absolutely. So I ended up, bless their hearts, I ended up going into the I took the apprenticeship exam at the union,
Mm,
and because I scored the points I did, they allowed me to choose any trade I wanted.
amazing.
So they opened up all the books, and books are literally all the trades within the hall that they have management over. And I looked at all the books, and there was this winding book, and I'm like, okay, I'm already fascinated by magnetism. There's nobody on the unemployed list.
Mm,
So that's a good sign.
yeah.
Can I go in here? Now, what nobody tells me is that I'm the first.
Yeah. Yeah, they're like, I guess you can go there. We don't know. We've actually never had anyone ask that question. So sure, try
Yeah,
it out.
sure. So I get into and because my training director was a winder, and that's the other thing, he knew the path I was about to walk upon. He tried to talk me out of it, and I wasn't being talked out of it because I knew I couldn't do residential. So I end up going into winding, but I get dispatched, and bless the union's heart, they dispatch me as a serviceman. And my name's Kelly. So guess what my first boss thought I was?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He actually asked me when he got my dispatch slip as I was standing in front of him if I realized I was a woman.
You're like, oh, crazy. I actually did. I actually have known my entire life, but thank
It
you
was
for
just
catching up. Yeah, but honestly, bless his heart that he did put that on because that probably did get you through the door, right? If you were the
oh
very
yeah.
first in Canada.
Oh
Yeah.
God, yeah. If they had not done that for me, I would have never gotten through that door ever.
Mm-hmm.
So bless their hearts. And it was really funny because you work as a maintenance man basically for a period of time. The trade watches you, and then they call you in for an apprenticeship interview. Basically, that's how it functions. So I go in for my interview, and I don't really understand I'm being watched because I sort of don't pay attention to that.
Mhm.
As a woman who is in the military, I've been too obvious too much to really care whether people watch
Mhm.
me or not.
Yeah, you become desensitized to it. You're just so
You
used to it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Mhm.
Knock yourselves out. But in my interview, one of the bosses kept coming back to what was I going to do about the guys? And I didn't understand the question because I don't look at men in a ooh boom chakalaka kind of term.
Mhm.
I look at the guys I work with like my brothers.
Oh,
Right? I
totally.
don't
Yeah.
have any
They're your
siblings, but that's
equals. Yeah.
literally
They're
how
your
I hold
equals
them.
at work. Yeah.
Yeah. So the questions he kept asking were just going like this. What are you going to do with the men? Work with them.
Yeah, like I don't know. I don't understand.
I have no idea why, but I didn't get it. And then finally, one of the journeys I worked with him, bless his heart, he's still one of my very dear friends. Denny stands up and says, "Stop,
Mm.
stop it." On the floor, she is just one of us. She's not a
Aw.
girl. She's not a woman. She's
Mhm.
just one of us. Leave her alone.
That's amazing.
Um, yeah, it was like, holy crap.
Denny and
So,
Al, my goodness, what
oh yeah.
champions. Like this
Oh,
has been a
I've had
constant through your story. Mhm.
all the way through. So I go out as a winder. I'm going out as an apprentice. One of the old Germans, bless his heart, comes up to me and tells me it's men's work. So we have a conversation about physiological differences between men and women.
Oh goodness.
Oh yes, because I'm at this point, I'm in my 30s, I'm tired, I need to earn money, stop bugging me, go away.
Yeah.
And I've done with this all my life because I was in the military and had the same sort of nonsense happen. So I looked at him and I said, so literally, we're really the same, except I have a vagina, you have penises, we both got tits. And he kind of looked at me like, oh my God. And I said, so how about this? How about all the work that shows up that needs a penis? You get to do.
Yeah, let's quantify it. If you want to go there, let's quantify it, and you'll realize that
Let's
it doesn't make
let's
any sense. There's nothing there. A job is a job.
A
Hmm.
job is a job. A tool is a
Yeah.
tool. And
Yeah.
just the look on his face, but he walked away, but 3 weeks later he walked up to me and he basically apologized for what he had
Good.
said to me he had watched me and he understood that I wanted to know my trade, that I was working really hard, that I really, really wanted to learn.
Hmm.
So he ended up taking me under his wing and literally became one of my mentors in the trade.
Oh, amazing.
And that was literally what I got, especially from the very first shop I ever worked at, which was Wismer and Rawlings, and we were building Skytrain motors.
Cool.
That crew in that building, I always joke that the trade had to get used to me, not the other way
Mhm.
around.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes that's true though. In that environment, it is true. Yeah,
Yeah.
I could see that.
And what they soon learned was that I could joke with them. I'm really clear about my boundaries. I always have been. I always start every conversation when I go to a new crew is, listen, we don't talk about my mom, we don't talk about my kid, and we don't use the C word. And the boys are all like, and I'm like, yeah, commitment. I hate that word. And they all start laughing. Like, we're like, can we? No, not even.
Yeah.
And I had a girl once say to me on a job site, why do you do that? And I said, because that's my personal line in the sand,
Mhm.
right? I lay it out right now. Here's what it is. Don't go past it. Anything outside of that, you're fine with. But here's my line.
These are the
And
three. Yeah.
I just learned as a female that that's the best thing you can do. Set boundaries right off the bat. Well,
Yeah.
I find that sometimes, especially if you're new, you'll kind of blur the boundaries. And then when things get blurred a little too far, and it's sort of like, okay, but how much do you have in what happened?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like
So
how much can you control out of a situation?
yeah, exactly. So for me, I got laid off. I went to work for another winding company, kind of bounced around a little bit, and I ended up not getting picked up for over a year, even though there were jobs available. So I ended up phoning into the local and saying, listen, I'm about to run out of health and welfare hours. I need to go back to work. And they have a program within that unit for winders. The way they get paid their overtime is if somebody needs hours, somebody who has hours in banked can take time off with pay, and the person who needs hours can come in and work.
Hmm.
It's called VO. So I asked for it. Basically, my he sort of went, now. And I went, no, seriously. So I went back as a coil taper, which was almost $15 an hour less than I should have been making doing the same job if I'd been an apprentice.
Mm.
And that lasted for about 3 months. And the boys on the floor got really, really angry And management came down and asked for a change in the contract in the ratios. And bless the guys' hearts, they said, listen, we'll give you the change. You can have this change. And management was like, ooh, yay. And they
Yeah.
said, but management was like, what do you mean? You're going to give Kelly back her apprenticeship. She's
Good.
going to finish her apprenticeship and you're going to keep her as a journey.
Good.
And
Amazing.
management wiggled a little, but they basically had to because they wanted that change. So the only reason I finished my first ticket is because of the guys I worked with, which
Oh my
is
goodness.
one of the reasons I believe so heavily in my union and
Mhm.
in unions in general. I'm an only child, right? I lived on army bases my whole life. I literally was always the new kid at school. But belonging to that group was
Mhm.
such an awesome feeling. And yeah, they're like my brothers. They piss me off. I piss them off. We pick on each other.
Yeah, it's the same as that. That is what it is. That's the environment.
It's that
That
give and take.
But
Yeah.
that's beautiful though, Kelly. I didn't
Yeah.
realize that was your story and that was your pathway. And I think like what was it that was so cool about that? There was like a couple things that stood out. One, that your life changed by a 3 day
Mm,
course of taking that like testing. Like
yeah.
that really started kind of the next
Boink.
exactly. That started the next chapter. But like I love that you also chose to make this decision and to be like, okay, well, I need to take care of my family. And it came out of
Yeah.
a place of being like, I need financial stability and I need independence. And how am I going to get there? And the fact that
Yeah.
the trades is a viable option for so many, it gives women financial freedom right off the get
Yeah.
go. So it's so, so powerful that that was brought into the story. But
Oh,
then
yeah.
I love this like, keep coming back to these amazing champions. Like that is
Oh, yeah.
crazy that that's how you got your first ticket and that they almost didn't give it to you and almost stripped
Yeah.
you of it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
the fact that like your union and like your brotherhood kind of stood for you
Oh,
because
yeah.
my sister, this is like a little bit of an aside, but my sister's a welder and
Yep.
she got into a pretty bad accident at work. And I will always be pro union and I will always support the union because of what they did for her, because that union
Yeah.
really, really, really stood by her. And I will always respect them for it. So I love that that's
Yeah.
also your story, that
Yeah.
they stood by you and got you your first ticket. Like
Oh, yeah.
that's crazy. You were the first.
Well,
Unreal.
my instructor at BCIT too, he's the one that actually told me I was the first. Like when I
Mm,
went to second year, I walk into school and bless Gordy's heart, he was my instructor. He takes me aside the first weekend and he takes me into his office. He says, okay, I want you to make me a promise. I'm like, what's that? He goes, you're going to promise me you're going to finish. And I went, finish the motor I'm working on?
yeah, like what are you
Right?
talking about?
He says to me, he says, no, I want you to make me promise me you'll finish your trade. And I said, well, why wouldn't I finish my trade?
Mhm.
And he said, has no one told you? I said, told me what? He said, if you finish, you will be the first. He said, I've been teaching at BCIT for 20 years. He
Oh
said,
my
you are the
goodness.
third female. He said, I've had in second year. He said, none of
Wow.
them come back.
Wow.
Somebody in my second year class messed with my project. If your motors don't work, you fail. Gordon, I had run my motor the night before testing. He knew it worked.
Yeah.
So when somebody messed with it the day of testing,
Oh my
and it
goodness.
didn't work, he already knew it had worked. So I got to pass. I totally know who did it too, because he made a comment at work the next week. He didn't baby me, but he certainly kept an eye on me all the way through.
Yeah.
He really did. And defended me, helped me, stood up for me, it was just amazing what that man did for me. He showed me not only my first year instructor, I was actually blessed all the way through my trades, both of
Mhm.
them. I've had the most wonderful instructors all the way
Mm.
through. I really have.
No,
Yeah.
it sounds like it. And it also sounds like that is like a huge component of your story of why you became a teacher as well as having these amazing mentors early on. And like these guys are like champions for women in
Oh,
trades,
yeah.
but for you and just for the trades in general. And like that's a beautiful aspect of the story. And I do want to
Yep.
talk about teaching. I know we're going to talk about the program, but before we get there, because I do want to
Yeah.
touch on really briefly your experience within the trades as a journey person. Is there a moment which stands out? Because you have two. It's not even like you have one trade, you got two of them. It's like, is there a moment that like stands out in your mind of when you look back at projects that you're like, oh my God, I made that motor or I
Oh,
was like making this radio system? Like, is there something that sticks with you that you're like, that was so cool that I got to do that?
for me as a winder, there's a couple.
Mm.
One, I rebuilt a quadratorque for Highland Valley Copper, which is a
Oh,
massive, there's a set of two of
yeah.
them, and they run a ball mill, which is basically a big dryer drum with ball bearings in it that crush the ore.
Yeah.
So I got to, as an
I
apprentice,
love those.
strip
Those are
it,
so cool.
file it. I got to help with the coils in. I got help to do all the terminations. And the first time I stood that thing over, because when you're winding it, it only stands about 5 feet tall.
Mhm.
right? When you're laying it on its side. But
Mhm.
when you stand it up to work, it's like, holy
It's huge.
crap.
Mhm. Oh, they're like as big as a building, and
They're
they're crazy
huge.
what they do.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And the generator rewind I did in Pell River.
Mm.
That was a really fun job for me. We worked 7/12s. It was adorable. When I got dispatched, my son said, "Mommy, can't you go? Can't some other mommy go?" And then we had to have this conversation about I was the only
Oh,
mommy in the trade.
yeah. There's
That
only
was
one
hard
mommy
for him.
in the
It was
trade. Yeah.
really hard for him to get his I just
Aw.
like, "Mom." Yeah,
Yeah.
I came home one day as a winder. I still remember this day so brilliantly. We'd had a sub blow up from hydro. We had to rebuild it. It had to be back online, and I was at work for 37 hours.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, that's a long day. That's a long
I
2
don't know.
days.
I don't know why they let us drive home. So
Oh
I
my
come
god.
home and my 5-year-old is standing at the top of my staircase with his little arms crossed and his little foot a tapping.
Oh, like in the angry post. Also, what a
Oh,
like
oh,
spitfire. That's very
oh.
funny.
And it's like, I'm like, "Can I help you?" And he goes, "Where have you been, young lady?"
You're like, sorry, sir. Didn't know you're running the roost. That's so cute.
Oh, my word, child. Yeah, I was like, "No, buddy, I went to work and came home. I just came home." And he goes, "No, no, no."
Not an excuse. Not allowed. I don't care that you were building a generator for the entire city of Pell River. I don't care. There wasn't chicken fingers
No.
exactly at 12, and you're cut. We have to talk about it. Like,
Oh, it was so funny. I mean,
uh,
he talks about it now about how when I used to like go out of town on jobs and come back home and how weird it was that his mom just wasn't there and then she was back and then yeah.
mm,
Yeah, but when I flipped trades, I mean, I was home all the time and he made that choice.
mhm,
Like when we were purchased, the new owner told me I'd never work for him.
mm,
So our training director, bless his heart, phoned me at home and said, "Do you want to be an electrician now?"
mhm,
And I sat my son down and said, "Okay, here's the choices. I stay in the trade, but I'm never home. I'll be out of town, but I'll keep making amazing money. Choice 2 is I'm home, but we take a massive pay cut." And bless my 12-year-old's heart, 'cause he was 12 by the time,
mhm.
he was okay with me taking the pay cut because he wanted me,
Aw,
not the money.
yeah. Oh my goodness. I can't believe
But
that happened to you. I'm sorry that you had to switch trades. Like it's cool that you had both tickets and you could, but like it's a shame of what pushed you there. But
yeah. I mean, I
yeah.
took a $30 an hour pay cut. I started all over again. It's so funny because when my apprentices whine at me about school, I go, "Wait a second.
Mhm.
I was teaching winders at night at the union hall while I was an apprentice during the day in my second trade, and I'm a single mom."
Mhm. But, like, a lot of women in the trade, especially the older generation, that was their
Yeah,
story, like, that was your
yeah.
guys' story. It's just too much, like, I don't know if you look back and you're like, "Oh my goodness, I was a Wonder Woman," like, what was I on that I was able to do all of those things, but it's
I
pretty
go through like
incredible.
this. It's like there's the end goal, and every time something got in my way, I went like and I
Around
always
it.
joke that this is the I'm a redhead, I have Irish and Scottish heritage, plus I'm Métis. You couldn't get a more stubborn combination if you tried.
I like that.
And it's so funny that every time the trade got in my way, it was like, "Okay, but I'll just do this."
Yeah.
And as an electrician, I was blessed again with great people that I worked with who and I never talked about my first trade because I didn't want them to know because they didn't want to come in with that whole, "Oh, I've already got a red seal" attitude.
Oh, totally. Mhm.
And I still remember my very first journey. I handed in my dispatch slip and this goes, "Oh, you're a second-year apprentice," because that's the credit they'd
Mhm.
given me. And I went, "Yes." And he goes, "So what do you know how to do?" And I went, "Nothing."
I'm lying just to be like, "Yeah, that ball mill, don't ask about it. I definitely winded it," but, like
I'd been in the winding trade for a
Yeah.
decade. I didn't
Yeah.
remember anything about being an electrician. I
Yeah.
really didn't because
Yeah, it
it's a
was new.
completely different trade. Like
Mhm.
we spent 4 years learning magnetism, electricians years, 4 years learning code and electricity.
Mhm.
Like it's two sides of the same coin. I looked at him and said, "But I have no bad habits, and you can make me in any kind of apprentice you want." So he said he watched me for a couple of days. He gave me to this lovely journey, and he taught me how to bend pipe.
Oh, cool. Oh, awesome.
And then that's all I did for like 6 months. All I did was
Mm.
run pipe for 6 months. I got really good at it,
Yeah.
but I was teaching at night. So the union already knew that I wanted to teach. Like this is already
Mhm.
something that I'd had a conversation eons ago that was going to be my end goal was to teach. The union didn't have its own school in 2004. We'd always gotten people out of BCIT, KPU, UFV, right? The different schools. We've never, until 2004, we didn't. And that was my old training director. It started with him, Rod Goy, who went off to be the dean of BCIT.
Amazing.
Then Andy Clevin came in, and Andy Clevin made it actually come to be. And then basically now under the leadership of the JTC, we've gone from one class at a time to we now have, I think, 4 classes running simultaneously. And for me, the best thing is almost every instructor is one of my old first year students.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's a cool full circle moment. Oh my goodness. I absolutely love that they all came back. Like, that's
That's always been
gorgeous.
my dream. When I
Hmm.
started teaching, that was it. It was literally like, okay, my very first class. Okay, in 10 years, somebody's coming back to take my job.
Yeah. Well,
And literally,
that's kind of why you do it, right? Is like to
yeah,
be like, I hope the people that I've helped along the way can come and replace me, and like we can
exactly.
kind of pass it forward and pass the baton.
Because I was raised to pass. You can't hold the knowledge. It's no good held,
No.
right? I was raised with that. You have to be of service. You have to teach. And if you know something, it really is up to you to pass that skill on to
Hmm.
somebody else.
Hmm.
So for me, I'm blessed with the fact that now we have all these amazing instructors, and literally I taught every single one of them in first year.
Oh my goodness. I love that. And I love that kind of like spirit of being a natural teacher because I feel like you have been a natural teacher and it's been like a long-term goal that you've realized to be like, okay, well, this is going to be my future. And if we could go there, if we could talk a
Yep.
little bit about the EJTC, which is the
Yep.
Electrical Joint Training Committee.
So the EJTC program
Yeah.
started way back, way back. So '04, the very first class was put on, and back then there wasn't a lot of pre-apprenticeship programs available. And what the union had realized and the contractors realized that it was safer to have somebody who was trained and safe
Hmm.
than right off the street,
Hmm.
right? That the old methodology of the kid right off the street, right, with no skill, walks on a job site, becomes an
Oh,
apprentice, is
dangerous.
just so dangerous.
Yeah.
And the trade recognized it, the union recognized it. So that's where the school started. I started in my very first class was January of '08. And we were literally, I taught 3 classes a year. I got 2 weeks off between classes. It was a lovely schedule.
Yeah, that is definitely sounds like the very start of a program of just being like, okay, you're not gonna sleep for 2 years, but like,
Yep.
welcome, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was so much fun because I got to work with Joe Jordan, who taught me when I was an apprentice
Mm.
at BCIT. He's one of my favorite humans. He still comes in and teaches at the school. He's in his 80s. I
Oh,
love him to death.
yeah.
But it's so great because the school has literally gone from 3 classes, and then way back in, oh gracious, 2012, we had so many applicants and so many amazing applicants that Andy wanted to make it so we could have more classes. So we actually started running 6 classes a year, and they're staggered by 8 weeks. And every single class is a competition. There's no wait list at
Mm.
all. And there's no you're a union kid, you're getting in. No, that doesn't work either. You have to take the entrance exam, which basically makes you prove that you know the math, the physics, and English to get through the prereqs for the program.
Mm.
Then you come in for a job interview. So you're sitting in front of the same people who would interview. You're coming in as an apprentice. You're sitting in front of that same group of people, and you have to answer 10 basic questions that we use. And by the way, those questions are my fault because in my first apprenticeship interview, we went off the rails. So now there's actually 10 prescribed questions. I kind of I chuckle about the ripples that my first apprenticeship
Yeah,
caused
I was
within
going to
my
say,
local.
it's like all of the instructors, it's the entire local. The local has all these Kelly rules to be like, okay, this is what you do. Like, to be like, can I go here? They're like, I don't actually know. No one's asked. Kelly, you're the first. Go for it. Test it out for us. Like, and that's definitely been a constant too.
Oh, yeah. My poor local. I don't know. I don't really. Sometimes I wonder. But we bought the building across the street. So our pension fund actually owns the school across the street from the union hall because we outgrew the school we were in with the union. We've actually outgrown that building, and now we're trying to figure out how to make, like, we're literally figuring out we might have to put a mezzanine in our shop because we literally, like, we do 6 classes a year of what we call our regular stream, which is just people who come in and apply. And reality is you need English 12 because of the code book, right?
Yeah.
It's written by lawyers.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things you got to have a really
It's
good grasp on.
heavy.
Oh
Yeah.
my God, it's
Yeah.
so
It's
heavy.
very heavy.
We want you to have pre-calculus because we know not first year, not second year, but third year. You're going to need that heavier math to get through third year. So that's why we as a local have chosen that to be one of our prereqs, that you have to hit that because we want you to get through. We don't want you to start and not finish. That's
Yeah.
the whole conversation for us. That's what the school's based on. We're picking students who we feel have the best opportunity to get all the way through the trade,
Mhm.
right? Because this isn't about making money. We're not for profit. We're not making money.
No,
This isn't about making money.
it's really cool what you guys are doing because it's very different. Like it's a
Mm,
partnership with EACA and also with
yeah,
IBU. Like it is
yeah,
a local partnership. It's a very
yeah,
interesting model and it is definitely
yeah.
not for profit, but the like you could just see it. Like this is like totally a bunch of people that are really passionate about the
Yeah,
trades and about getting that next generation. But
yeah,
you can see that the topics you guys teach are really specialized. They're going to be useful. Like I feel like
yeah,
there is no fluff at your school. Like everything you can put straight into action the next day. And
yep,
your standards are crazy high. It was really interesting going through the
yep,
EJTC kind of application from afar and just I was
yeah,
like, "Oh my god, this is a lot. This
yeah,
is heavy duty." It's
yeah.
crazy. It's really cool.
Well, because we want them to be successful. That's the whole
Yeah.
conversation. That's literally our goal. Our vision statement is about supporting national goals and keeping the trade healthy. It says nothing about the union.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. I believe that in our school, we build good apprentices
Mhm.
because the trades are built on solid apprentices,
Yeah.
and giving them the tools, both academically and in a lot of cases, just our trades experience. Because all of us, between us all, have such a broad variety. We've now got the gentleman who at one point was assistant chief instructor. He's now chief instructor. I've actually stepped back
Mm.
because I'm 63. So my staff asked me to not walk out the door. So one of the choices I made was to take my assistant, which is James McKinnon, who's an amazing man. He's got 2 degrees in semiconductors
Oh,
and a red
wow.
seal as an electrician. Like this man is brilliant and he's
Mhm.
such a great heart. But I pushed James up to be the boss.
Mm. No, I love that. That's like to be like the next stepping stone. And like that's the thing from your program that you can see even as somebody like a geoscientist like myself that's outside. You can
Yep.
just see that you guys are kind of pushing that next generation, but I also think you're keeping the trades really modern and
Yeah,
really topical for like what is to come. So
we
it's like
do.
talking about like the next generation of technology. What does like
Yeah.
what's changes of culture going to look like? Like what are the big problems that we need to
Yeah.
really focus on? And you guys are running the first Indigenous specific apprenticeship class. It's an absolutely incredible program. I think you guys just graduated your first class.
We
Could
did
you speak?
all the way through. This program only exists because of Access and our partnership with them and with Skill Plan.
Yeah.
Because Access has been an amazing partner. They're one of our best partners, in my opinion, because they can culturally and in other ways support the students in ways that we who have not been raised within the culture do not understand. And although we respect it, I still love the fact that when things get into a place where I need someone, I can phone Access and say, "Hey, can we have somebody come in?" And sometimes it's just because perhaps something was misconstrued or something, but it's that, okay, let's figure this out so we can keep walking together because that's what
Mhm.
we need to do. Skill Plan, they come in and academically upgrade the students. So those students who don't have those academics because of the reasons of what has happened within their cultures,
Mhm.
Skill Plan gets them and supports them all the way through.
Oh,
They
amazing.
come in as tutors. I'm currently teaching with Squamish Nations, which is another program, which is out another one, not through Access, but through Squamish Nations.
Yeah.
This is my third class through them. It's the same conversation between Squamish Nation's Skill Plan and us. It's the
Mhm.
same program, except they sort of run concurrently beside each other
Yeah.
because,
There's two.
right?
Yeah.
2 different funding programs, but it's the same basic platform. It's offering chances and changes.
Mhm.
And for me, the crew that just went through fourth year, because I watched them go through, for some of them, I was their first year teacher. I had a couple of them through second year. All of them I love to death. I mean, and the joke about me is I'm mama bear because I will equally smack them in the back of the head as give them a hug, depending on what they need that day.
Yeah. Hey, you need a little bit of both, honestly, especially in this like this industry. Like that's perfect. Yeah, that's what they
Yep.
need.
Yeah. And I call them on their crap. It's like,
Yeah.
you don't get to pull that. Stop it. That doesn't hang here.
Yeah.
But for me, like the fact that that picture, those 2 young people were in university who chose to make a change. And I got to teach Matthew in first year, and I got to watch Miss Cooper go all the way through her apprenticeship, coming to school, both of them. They are 2 of my favorite humans.
Aw.
Matthew in my family is one of my adopted kids. Literally, my husband and I, his mother just recently passed away from
Oh, shame.
ALS. So Matthew he gets invited to dinner. He's just one of our
Oh,
kids.
yeah.
And we watch over him because he needs it, right? He needs that extra support. But for
Oh,
me, I'm just so blessed that these people let me into their lives,
yeah. Oh my
right? And when
goodness.
I started, my first boss said, "Okay, you're just their teacher." And I started chuckling and thought, "Yeah, no."
No, Kelly, I think it's such a blessing that you're in their lives, but I also think that like that's such a testament to this also this industry is like it's
Yeah,
not an impersonal thing. It's very, very personal. And it's also, especially
yeah,
being a woman within a trade and within like
yeah,
a male populated environment, it is always going to be personal and it is
yeah.
always going to become familial because you're like, this is where we have to go, man. Like this is how
Uh-huh.
we get there together. And that's
Yeah,
beautiful that you guys are creating this program through Access and Squamish Nation and
yeah,
creating chances for people. I think that's the best way to put it. And it's so important to put our best foot forward and also to have
yeah,
structural programs in place to make equity more accessible for these
yeah,
communities, especially after they were like the victims of structural genocide and terrible things by Canada. And it's wonderful to finally see us going in the right direction just a
yeah,
little bit,
yeah,
just starting. It should have
yeah.
happened 50 years ago, 60 years ago, but
Yep.
it's good that this program exists now, and that's wonderful
Yeah.
to see your first generation of women and men go through it. That's amazing.
Yeah. And for me, I'm so proud of every single one of them. Like these students, that especially that first class, they really busted their butts.
Hmm.
And they've gone through some horrendous things over their years in the trade, but all of them have come out the other side. We've got Matthew who actually wants to come and teach. So, when he
Oh, cool.
journeys out.
Yes.
So, right, this is the whole continuation because I keep saying,
The Kelly
I
Ripple.
well, I can't retire until someone else of my ilk is in a chair. I
Hmm.
can't, right? I can't as the only Aboriginal on the teaching crew leave in good conscience until I have someone to replace me. And it's funny because every class I teach, I pick somebody out of every class, and I'm like, okay, so in 10 years,
Hmm. You're going to be it.
it's interesting because one of my teachers, Tyler, who apparently didn't do well in school but hit me and got in 98s, and apparently his grandma grabbed his cheeks and did the whole "I knew you were smart."
Aw.
But as Tyler says, it's about caring, and that's what I love about our school is that
Mhm.
at BCIT and the bigger schools, they're so big, they don't have the space to be allowed to really care. They just don't. There's too many students, there's too much stuff, they can't. But we're tiny. I think we make like 96 students a year. Like seriously, we're not making a lot of electricians, but we're making the best we can.
Yeah.
But in that availability within our cohorts, we allow the teachers to give a damn. And they really, really do. Every single one of my teachers who's currently teaching for us came back to teach because they felt it's the thing they had to do. They had to give that back. And I don't really care what people do with the education we give them,
No, but it doesn't
right?
matter. Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
care. Go be happy. That's all I want people to be. Just go be happy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're setting
Yeah.
them up and like and I love that personalized message and that personal touch point. And if it starts at education, doesn't matter. You make 98 electricians. That's great. It's 98 wonderful people that could probably
Yeah.
change the culture, right? Kelly, I know that we've talked a lot about being the first and we've talked about kind of your journey and your experience as an educator. I wondered if we could maybe talk a little bit about like women in the trades or working within the trades, if there's something that's still like a barrier to entry or a barrier to stay, because I know we did speak earlier about
Yeah.
retention and I wanted
Yeah.
to maybe just talk about that,
Yep.
what something that still we need to change.
I went through my second trade as an electrician with two amazing women, Kim Feeney and Teresa Hurl, both 20 years younger than me, but both still really dear, dear friends of mine. We wanted to support the women behind us. Basically, between the three of us, we managed to get the very first women's committee for the IBW in Canada.
Amazing. Ha.
And I joke that it's me for 20 years going, knock, knock, knock. Can we have a women's committee? And they're going, no, Kelly. Knock, knock, knock. Can we have a women's committee now? No. And then I
I
got
got two more
Teresa.
people.
And then I got Kimmy and Teresa, like, knock, knock, knock.
There's three of us now. Can we now start it?
Can we have it?
Yeah.
But it was so amazing because the women in my local stood together. We managed to get the very first committee, which literally spread across Canada like wildfire. It was hilarious.
Yeah, they're
I
everywhere.
phoned the international and said, hey, can I have in Ottawa for Canada and said, hey, can I have the bylaws for women's committee? And they go, the what? I'm like, the bylaws for women's committee? And they're like, we don't have any of those. And that for me was that moment where I went, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And so for me, that was one of those things. And I've always said that I don't want equality, I want equity. And the biggest thing I think that's holding women back is daycare.
No,
It is.
completely. Yeah.
24, I think there should be 24-hour daycare because of all the shift work. How much money and how do you take care of your kids? And it's not just single moms, there's single dads, and it's families that really, really need this. And it has to be affordable for everybody. But the daycare workers still have to make a living wage.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this balance. And to me, I think that some of our taxes should go into things like
Oh,
daycare,
I agree completely because I think that
right?
like it's a woman's issue completely of like what do you do? Do you
Yep.
support a family or do you have a career and what does that look like? And what careers can you have? Right? Like
Well, even look at your 7-Eleven workers and
yeah.
your gas station workers and your janitors. I mean, how many of those people drag their kids along to work at night in buildings because they don't have daycare,
Yeah.
right? And I'm sorry, but in a country like Canada, that should not be okay. And for me, when you look at Japan where they put the elderly with the little kids, it's so good
Mhm.
for both,
Yes. Yeah.
right? There are countries that are doing it. And to me, there's got to be a way that we can figure this out because it'll support everybody, especially the kids.
Hmm.
Because if they don't get the right support when they're little, they're not going to have the skill set when they get older.
Oh, totally. Your son, that story that you shared about being like, what about the other mommies? And be like, well,
Yeah.
I'm the only mommy. Like I'm the only one there. And like I think
Yeah.
that's kind of that's testament to maybe this challenge that we're putting on ourselves that isn't necessary. And yeah, I agree. I do think that it would help with retention.
Yeah.
To bring
Yeah.
it back maybe to the light a little bit and to
Yep.
end a little bit on the joy. I Another part of our conversation earlier was
Mhm.
how your local's grown and it's gone from
Yep.
2 to 17%, which
Yep.
is just amazing. If we could talk about like the future of women in trades, like what would you envision if you could be this like futuristic utopia end goal? What would that look like? And then what do you think is needed for us to kind of get there for
I,
equity instead of equality?
I've always said that we're 48% of the population. We should have accessibility to 48% of whatever jobs we want.
Mm.
That our gender has to stop being a conversation. It just
Yes,
has to.
agreed.
It
Yeah.
just has to
Yeah.
stop. Somebody asked me, when do I think we'll have won? And I said, when we stop having to talk about our gender.
When I'm out of a job.
Oh,
Yeah, when
like,
I
God, could you stop? And for me, it goes all the way back to when I was a winder,
Mhm.
having a crew come in from Kuala Lumpur to have a look at some motors we were building for them. And they literally came to you could hear their heels grind into the concrete at the shop. And they started taking pictures. And I was like,
What is up?
what the
I'm
hell?
just making a motor.
They'd never seen a woman
Oh my
ever
goodness.
on the tools. And there's this moment of, oh my God. And I've now talked to women like from India where they have to take their babies on job sites because the laborers have no daycare. Like we don't have it as bad as other places. But to me, here in Canada, there is no reason why we can't set up systems that can take care of the kids.
Mhm.
But to me, that's what we have to look at. And maybe look at the combination of adult daycare with, child daycare and have it 24 hours so that we have nurses and trained people and just that whole combination. Because I really do think that little kids are helped by the elderly and the
Yeah.
elderly are helped by little kids. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good match. It's a good like community and like a
Yeah.
good next generation like teaching and next
Yeah.
generation kind of passing that on. I think
Yeah.
yeah, I agree that this is the same kind of answer as the previous is like how do you get there? And like a big one is the barrier to retention is childcare.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I love that you called out of being like when our gender is not an issue. And that's something that I always think about having this podcast. And that's why I try to ask more questions about like, what was the coolest motor you've built? Or like, what was like, we do have to have the
Yeah.
questions about like equity. We do have to have
Yeah.
those conversations for sure. But like, I want it
Yeah.
to be a little bit bigger. I want eventually that I don't have to have this show. Like, I love
Yeah.
it. It's a personal, like selfish thing that I absolutely love connecting with people. So I don't want it to
Yep.
go away too quick, but like,
Yep.
it would just be lovely that when somebody thinks of an electrician, they think of you. And when somebody thinks of a geologist, they think of me. Right.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
whoever, your friend,
Yeah.
right? Matthew. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
who.
Yeah. To me, I've always said that if you take our skin off, we're all the same. So why does it matter when we go to like Really? Like, I don't really. And for me, the things like the fact that here in BC, we got flush toilets for construction workers, the fact that we had to fight for that is hilarious, in my opinion. Also sad. Glad we got it. The next generation is not going to put up with the stuff that
No.
my generation put up with. They're just not going to put up with it. I put up with it because I went through my first trade with, and I use this term from slab, head down, ass up.
Yeah. Yeah, but you had to. Like you really
I,
did, like to
I
survive it. It
just
was a
I
completely
had
different
to.
environment.
It was, and I'm so glad I'm a tomboy because it made it easier for me to fit in with the boys in a way than somebody who maybe wasn't that way. But for me, it's just that I was old enough when I walked on the tools to be confident enough not to get bullied.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if I'd come in my 20s, it would have happened. But because of my ex-husband and the abuse and then the therapy, when I went into trades, I had some real clear lines about what I was going to
Mm-hmm.
tolerate by that
Mm-hmm.
point. And I also learned it wasn't always me.
Mm-hmm.
Biggest lesson as a woman, it wasn't about me ever.
Yeah.
It wasn't ever about me. It was about men having issues with their own shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I just happened to represent the little
Whoever
weird
that was.
conversation,
Yeah.
whoever was going on, whatever's
Or
going.
whatever that conversation was, that idea. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I'm so grateful that I was old enough and I'd had enough therapy that I was able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And with the guys at work that used to get really angry, and I learned, I always teach this to the apprentices, listen, when you get somebody who's just that, like just won't get off that, I flip the switch and I go from being reactive to being pity.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how sad are you that your
Oh,
life is
that's
in such a
powerful.
place
Yeah.
that your response to this stimuli, whatever it is
Yeah.
to go, right? And I found that when I did that within myself, it completely altered the way things happened around me for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that, wait a second. Oh, and literally in my head, and I've said this to people in my head, I go, oh, muffin. And I want to pat them on the head. And just having it in my head so shifts the
Mm-hmm.
conversation
It's
that
less blaming on yourself and less
there's,
like guilt. There's no guilt all
yeah,
of a sudden.
no,
Mm-hmm.
because, oh my God, you're having a horrible day, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very sad for you. What can I do to help? And it completely, for most people, it'll take that person and make them go,
Yeah,
what? Yeah.
that's a powerful piece of advice. No, that's thank you. I appreciate that because I think that like that's so useful for women first entering these spaces because I do
Yeah.
think that we internalize everything like to the point that
Mm-hmm.
we have to be like perfect. We represent our entire
Oh,
again
yeah.
this conversation that gender still matters that we like
Yep.
represent all of womanhood and it's too much pressure for anybody to handle but it's such a known crutch that you could ask anybody and they'll be like, yep, I did that. Yes, I did that. So
Yep.
that's such a wonderful mindset and piece of advice to be like, okay, how
Yeah.
do we flip it?
Yeah.
No,
And for
Callie,
me,
that's
that's the
amazing.
best one because we all have worked with those old guys,
Hmm.
right? Or even the young guys who literally are screaming and you're looking at them going, what is wrong with you? And for me, I think as I ran a daycare, I
Mm,
really sometimes, oh, look, it's the toddler,
yeah.
right? It's that, oh my God, somebody's throwing a temper tantrum. Can we be a grown up, please? Good. Let's try that.
No, I think that's a perfect place to end it, Kelly. And I think that's really good of like the last piece of advice. And I just want to say thank you so much for this conversation because it was such an honor to speak with you. And it's just so cool to hear your story and to hear that, yeah, you're the first, which is just insane in itself. But like, but it comes with so many challenges and so many like ups and downs. And like, I love that little segment of like you being stubborn and just like going around every little thing. And I think your story is a testament to that.
Yep.
And I love what you guys are doing at EJTC and what you guys are doing with the Indigenous apprenticeship programs. I can't
Yeah.
wait to see the next level of apprentices finishing and completing and graduating. I just think that's going to be absolutely beautiful. So can't
Yeah.
wait to see the next generation of those programs. And just thank you so much, Kelly, for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. It was so lovely.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for, letting me tell my silly stories. But yeah, the people in our programs are amazing. Everybody in all our programs they're changing their lives, and it takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of strength. And I'm always impressed and just humbled by how hard it is for some people. And especially our new immigrants, it's wonderful to watch them walk into the trade and get something awesome.
Yeah. And
I
just
mean, I
become
went
an
I went
electrician.
from welfare to 120 a grand a year.
That's
That's what the
insane.
trade did for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
so powerful and life transforming. And it's just, yeah, that's the power of the trades. That's beautiful.
Yep.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Well, thank you, Kelly. This is lovely.
Thanks, Eddie.
And thank you for those listening with the Smoko podcast. We will see you next Wednesday. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.